Welcome to the Afterlife podcast. This is your host, Pooja Chilukuri, and I have with me today Alyssa Marley. I have gotten to know Alyssa recently because I was a guest on her show. She is passionate about interviewing people that have had all kinds of spiritual and paranormal experiences. And she is here with us today to share her journey. Thank you so much, Alyssa, and welcome to the show.
Pooja, I just love you so much. So thank you so much for having me on the show. I just feel like we're two souls that are like meant to be friends. So thank you again so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for saying that, Alyssa. I feel the
Yeah.
same way. And
Yeah.
just starting out, I would love to ask you, what got you interested in this whole paranormal, supernatural type things?
You know, there's such a backstory with this. I think I don't know if you've heard any of my story like on any other like podcast, but I had a very traumatic history with like drug addiction and trauma and things like that. And while I was going through all of that, my creativity was totally shut off, and
Mhm.
I was just living for basically like highs, like trying to like, cover pain with like something like a quick fix, whether it be from drugs or whatever mode you could use. But since I've been sober for a few years now, my creativity has just come back with like a vengeance, like in a positive way. I don't know. It's so weird. I just have this drive to learn and to create. And I've always been fascinated with near-death experiences. I used to also watch a lot of like documentaries about like paranormal things. And so I think also I do really enjoy listening to podcasts quite regularly. I'd say almost daily. So I thought may as well take the passion that I have for learning these things and hearing about these things and create my own podcast, especially because with like near death studies, it's given me this like validation that we don't have to fear death. So I feel like I can pass that on to other people that maybe wouldn't necessarily hear about these types of topics, and then just like sharing what I've learned, basically.
That's awesome, Alyssa. I think we share that passion in common for sure.
Yeah.
And, with all the people that you've interviewed, and you've had some fascinating guests on there with all kinds of experiences, is there any paranormal, supernatural, spiritual, near-death experience, any story that stood out to you? And when you heard it, you went, wow, I didn't know that. Or wow, that's like unbelievable.
But pretty much everything I hear is like so mind-blowing, and oh, I've heard so many, but I'm not sure. Do you know who Betty Guadagno is?
Yes, I
She goes by
interviewed
Betty
her on
Buddha.
this show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We kind of have like also like similar backgrounds. So when I heard her story, coming from like a background of drug addiction and having her spiritually transformative experience, and coming back and just like having this zest for life, it was somebody that I could relate to. And it was also kind of fascinating because it kind of put that bug in my ear that like, oh, maybe there are things that I haven't learned yet that could be true. Because she talks a lot about pre-birth planning. And
Mhm.
I think even in her experience, she remembers like I think she basically described it like she was going through like a grocery store and like picking like all these like life experiences off the shelves that she wanted to have in her life experience. And she really talks about like how um basically if you look at life through that lens, you can kind of disarm yourself from that victim mentality, because you could be like, oh, I chose to go through this experience
Mhm.
to, I don't know, like evolve, like I went through this experience for a reason. So even though it's challenging in the moment, and of course we're going to feel human feelings where you could
Mhm.
feel sad or overwhelmed or depressed, the fact that you could look at it from that lens, like I chose to go through this experience for a specific reason, just helps you kind of get rid of that victim mentality. So I was like, oh yeah, that's so true. And so I mean, I think in any sense Like I'm kind of an optimist, so I feel like you can always find the silver lining in anything, or you can use certain experiences to help other people. So that was something I really related with because I'm like, that's what I can do. I can just like share love and
Mhm.
put a positive spin on things.
Thank you, Alyssa. Betty's story is also one of my favorites. And
Hmm.
I do remember her saying that the perspective that we have from the other side is so different. That's why we choose the terrible things without, because on that side, I guess we don't realize how terrible it's going to feel once we're inside our
Yeah.
body.
Yeah, exactly. We just have that amnesia that we forget where we came from.
Yeah.
And then we're like, ah, I changed my mind.
Yes, absolutely. And that also brings me to a question like, exploring these near-death stories. For me, I know I hear things that I either find it not hard to believe because I trust the people that are bringing these stories, but almost fascinating to where, we're deeply conditioned to not either whether through religion or through society, that some of these things we tend not to believe or like, where's the proof? Or scientifically, how could we prove this or that? So did you ever encounter any kind of skepticism? Like and how do you deal with that if somebody's watching your show and they're like, well, this is hard to believe. I don't believe this. Or have you ever had that happen?
Oh, yes, I've had that happen before. Well, even specifically about like pre-birth planning as an example, I've had people get really upset about it because they're like, I didn't choose this. Like, why would I choose this? So I think that you just have to kind of let it go. Like, it's not my responsibility to change anybody's minds. And I also don't think that the truth is necessarily the same for every single person. So we can take a little bit from this and a little bit from that and just kind of take on what works for us. So I just continue to share, and my job is not to like preach like this is like the way it is 100%. I'm just giving, the lessons or things that I've learned and passing them on to the next person. And I'd say like I know tarot readers say this all the time, but like take what resonates with you and leave what doesn't. But
Mhm.
that's kind of like how I live my life. And I think it works for people, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. So I have another question for you, Alyssa, like because I know, especially because it's true in my case. So I always want to ask this. What kind of faith did you have before you went on this podcasting journey? And then did it change because of this? Did your worldview change? Did you have a shift in perspective?
That is a great question. So, yes, I was raised Christian.
Mhm.
Basically, we started at like I think my grandparents were Brethren Christian, so very like buttoned up and conservative. And then my mom brought us to like the Baptist church, and then we kind of veered into like the Pentecostal, like hands over like people praying, healing, speaking in tongues, things like that. So I I think there's it just is connected with like some of my trauma, my past trauma. There was also religious trauma. So
Mhm.
like things like my youth pastor when I was going to high school, he basically had an affair on his wife and basically groomed one of the girls that was above me, like one grade above me. And
Mhm.
but it's just like obviously illegal. Like you shouldn't be doing that, but
Mhm.
like just doing inappropriate things. And that was like from one of our leaders that we looked up to in the church. And a lot of things happened that just really broke my trust when it came to like Christianity and organized religion. So I don't know if it was specifically because of like where my like viewpoints or belief system has gone now, but that just kind of veered me in a different direction to kind of seek different
Mhm.
perspectives and different philosophies. Um, but it never really sat well with me. It still like bothers me to this day because like I have Christian roots, like of course, like that's my foundation. So
Mhm.
there are constantly things that I go back and forth with, like, is this right? Is this not right? But you know how it says like in the Bible that like if you believe that God is or that Jesus is the Son of God and that he died on the cross for your sins, that you'll go to heaven. What about everybody else? that's like always been something that bothers me. Like what about like everybody who's like a Sikh or a Muslim or a Jew or like all these different religions. So I think I've always like been like, okay, like what can I get from this? Like this, there are certain things about Christianity that are beautiful.
Mhm.
Um, that like, love one another and we show who our creator is by loving each other. That's
Mhm.
like, and that's the purpose of why we're here is just to love each other. I know I sound like a hippie, but that's just like it's just like so deep rooted
It's
in me. But I think you know, being exposed to near-death studies and the paranormal, it just makes me believe that maybe we don't have it fully right. So I'm just wanting to continue to learn.
That's a great place to be, Alyssa, because I really think that some mysteries are not to be solved. And,
Yeah.
some things that are still uncertain and that are mystery, that's what faith is about. I don't think
Hmm.
faith is about being 100% sure about everything.
Yeah.
That just destroys the purpose of faith, I think.
Yeah.
And thank you for saying that because I was in an evangelical church for a long time, and I come from a Hindu background, and I really love Jesus even to this day. But it always made me wonder, what about my family? Because I grew up Hindu. And so I really wrestled with that. And of course, with all the near-death experiences and all these stories and, just the evolution of my own soul, I don't believe that Jesus is exclusive like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Honestly, the one of the biggest things that like I reference over and over again, I don't even remember who said it, but one of my previous guests said that when she met our creator on the other side, she's like, "What should I call you?" And he said, "It matters less what you call me, but that you call me at all." And I think, people have these different perspectives when they have their near-death experiences because of what's familiar to them. So it doesn't, I think that like God is universal. Like, and
Mhm.
you're just going to see what's familiar to you because like it will help you understand who it is that you're looking at. It doesn't like I think that maybe everybody is a little bit right and a little bit wrong at the same time, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. It's really funny because you reminded me of someone this is not someone I interviewed, but someone whose story I saw through IANS. That's the International Association for Near-Death Studies, for those who are watching and listening. And her name is Amy Call. And I think I came across her story. It's got to be at least 10 years. And she was met with it was either an angel or a spirit guide. And she asked him which is the right religion. I think she grew up in a Mormon church, and then she was wanting to know what is the right religion. And they said to her, it's like asking what cheese is the moon made of.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that something?
Oh,
So,
wow.
but yeah,
Interesting.
and so I really appreciate you bringing these conversations to light, Alyssa, because I think this can help all of us grow together
Hmm.
because some things are universal, and that's where we touch each other, in a very deep way.
Yeah.
We have more in common than not. So
Yes,
I
I
get
agree.
it. So today, how do you see your faith?
I would say that I just don't subscribe or follow any organized religion anymore, but
Mhm.
I do believe that there is God, and
Mhm.
I do feel like I have a relationship with this entity, whoever he, she, we just said, like whoever they
They
are.
are. Yeah.
And I feel like I'm being led. Like I do feel like I receive signs or intuition or guidance. So there is a relationship of spirituality with our creator. It's just
Mhm.
not necessarily like subscribing to like fitting in a specific box, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Mhm. And I always say the box is important as long as you need it, and then when
Hmm.
you don't need it anymore, I guess that's when, the connection with spirit deepens. In my opinion, I think sometimes we need the box to, you know, get to that point.
Oh,
So,
for sure.
yeah, for
And I
sure.
think that religion can be a beautiful thing when it is used correctly. I think that like my perspective is somewhat jaded just because of my past experiences. But there are so many people that have something good from it.
Mhm.
So I say go for it.
Yeah, me too. And you know, Alyssa, that's another thing we have in common. I've been very jaded as well, but I also experienced a lot of good things.
Hmm.
So I know it works, when
Yeah.
it's done right.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
speaking of that, do you think, like, with all these spiritual explorations, hearing all these stories about paranormal, near death, angels, guides, Jesus, like all kinds of entities on the other side, and then we have, folks that are very scientifically oriented
Hmm.
and want proof for everything. Do you think science and religion or spirituality can coexist, or do you see those lines getting blurred at all?
Oh, I definitely think that they coexist. I mean, the biggest thing is like, if you, for instance, like with Christianity, like it says in the Bible that God created us in his image, right?
Hmm.
So if you do subscribe to that, like we are meant to be curious and ever evolving and look at science and expand our knowledge. Like I like that's how we were created. So
Hmm.
I know that like some people really need that proof to believe in certain things, but I
Hmm.
think that like if once somebody is ready, they will have an open mind.
Hmm.
Maybe if they do need that proof and they say like nothing else exists, I'm just an atheist or whatever it is, then they're just not ready to be
Hmm.
exposed to spirituality.
What are your thoughts on what spirituality is?
Like what it is, I think it's
Hmm.
just I mean, there's so many degrees, right? It could just be meditation, it could be Reiki, it could be tarot. It just depends. But I think it's just having an open mind to
Hmm.
some kind of draw from your soul, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. Like
Yes, yes, it
I think
does.
that's another thing that we're created to be is like a being that is constantly like searching for something. And a lot of people talk about like having like a hole in their heart or like a
Mm.
void and that they're
Hmm.
trying to fill it. They're trying to fill it. Sometimes
Hmm.
it needs to be filled with spirituality. So we sometimes you don't even know what it is you're trying to fill that void with, but it could be spirituality or a hobby or all these things. But I think we're
Yeah,
very complex creatures.
I think we are. And I've even joked about it because I read somewhere that a scientist looking under a microscope, if they get in a trance doing that, well, they're being
That could
spiritual.
be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in that moment. Yes.
Well, because you
So,
also have to think like, where does this come from? Like, or
yeah.
how did this get here?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And that brings me to my next question. And this has no right or wrong answer because I ask this every time I get a chance.
yeah.
Why do you think we're here?
Yeah, that's like the age-old question, right? Like, what is the purpose of life? I think that from what I've started gathering from these near-death experiences is we are here to evolve and we are
Hmm.
here to have this life experience. And I
Hmm.
think that we are not aware of all the things that are out there. I mean, think about it even now in the news with all these like UAPs and UFOs. We don't know what all is out there. So I think it's just about experiencing things, learning things. And then I feel like on the other side, we are all a collective. So
Hmm.
all this knowledge goes back up to the collective. And then we can choose to have another life experience, whether it's here or on another planet or in another dimension. Like, I think the possibilities are endless, and we're not even touching the tip of the iceberg right now.
Yeah, and I learn something new every time, and this is something I hadn't heard before, Alyssa. So thank you. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that. So do you have any advice for those that are curious about exploring the spirit realm, or they're deconstructing from their faith and they're exploring, or just someone that's going through a transition where the old beliefs are not serving them and they're restless and they're seeking
Yeah.
to.
I think we are in a society are so private. So I think finding people that you trust to talk
Mm.
things through is really important.
Mhm.
I also am very honest about how I'm constantly going to therapy. And if you can afford it, if you can do it, therapy is really good. But also exposing yourself to things that maybe push you outside of your comfort zone. So
Mhm.
listening to podcasts where there are people who have had near-death
Mhm.
experiences, just to
Mhm.
learn other perspectives, and then again,
Mhm.
take what resonates with you and then just leave behind what doesn't.
Yeah, I always say that. That's very
Yeah.
important because we're all in a different place in our journey, right? And
hmm
so, how can people connect with you and where can we find you and your work, Alyssa? What's the best way?
Yeah, so I am all over the place. I have Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Most of my handles are Something Paranormal Podcast. I believe Instagram is Something Paranormal Podcast. You can also send me an email, somethingparanormalpodcast at gmail.com. Feel free to send me an email if you're just interested in chatting. I also have, the podcast Something Paranormal. So if you want to be a guest on the show, feel free to reach out.
Yes, absolutely. And I will make sure to include all of those links in the show notes as well, Alyssa.
Okay, thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Thank you for your time and thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you so much.